Level 1. The first 48 hours. The lawyers explain it to you in language designed to make you feel small. A hedge fund isn't a bank account. It's not a pile of cash sitting in a vault somewhere. It's an active investment vehicle. Right now, that $1 billion is deployed across short positions, long equity bets, derivatives contracts, credit instruments, and real assets in 6 different countries. There are 23 employees who showed up to work this morning not knowing if they still have jobs. There are investors, called limited partners, who have entrusted their own fortunes to this fund. Some of them are family offices. Some are university endowments. One is a foreign sovereign wealth fund. And here's the first thing nobody tells you about inheriting a hedge fund. The money isn't really yours, not in the way you're imagining. You control it, but most of it belongs to the investors. Your grandfather or your father or your uncle, whoever left you this, they built this machine, and you just got handed the keys with the engine already running. Stall it, and the damage is catastrophic for everyone. Your first instinct is to do nothing. Don't touch anything. Just let it run. That instinct is actually correct, and it might be the smartest financial thought you'll have all week. Because the number one mistake people make when they suddenly have access to generational wealth is they move too fast. They change things. They make their presence felt. They want to prove they belong in that room. And that impulse destroys more inherited wealth than almost anything else. Level 2. The psychology no one prepares you for. Here's something that will surprise you. Studies on lottery winners, inheritance recipients, and sudden wealth syndrome, yes, that's a real clinical term, consistently show the same pattern. Within 5 years, a significant portion of people who receive sudden massive wealth are worse off financially and psychologically than before they received it. Not because money is evil, because the human brain is not wired for sudden abundance at scale. When you have nothing, every dollar feels precious. When you have $1 billion under management, individual dollars stop feeling real. A $200,000 decision feels like a $20 decision used to feel. And that cognitive distortion is extraordinarily dangerous. You stop doing basic math because the numbers feel abstract. You start making decisions based on gut instinct and ego rather than data. You surround yourself with people who tell you what you want to hear because disagreeing with the person who signs the checks is a career-ending move. This is why the most important thing you can do in your first 6 months isn't make a single investment decision. It's build the right team. And more importantly, it's learning the brutal difference between the people who are loyal to you and the people who are loyal to the money you control. Those are not the same people. Level 3. The first real decision.
3 months in, the fund's existing team has been running things on autopilot. The chief investment officer, a 58-year-old man named David who has been with his fund for 19 years, comes to you with the first real decision you'll have to make. There's a position in the portfolio hemorrhaging money, a leveraged bet on a commodity play that your predecessor put on 6 months before he died. The market moved against it. You're down $47 million on paper. David wants to cut the position, take the loss, move on. But one of the senior analysts thinks the thesis is still intact, and doubling down could recover everything and then some. This is your first real test, and here's what makes it so vicious. Both arguments sound equally convincing. The data supports both conclusions depending on which assumptions you weight more heavily. You have to make a call that will either lose $47 million or potentially double down and lose even more. Or it works and you're a genius. You're 21. You've been investing in index funds for maybe 2 years, and 47 people are watching you make this decision. The right answer isn't the investment answer. The right answer is a process answer. You call in a third-party risk consultant with no stake in the outcome. You demand a written stress test of both scenarios. You give yourself 72 hours and you don't let anyone pressure you into a timeline that serves their agenda rather than yours. You cut the position. You take the loss because the cardinal sin at scale isn't losing money. It's losing your process. Undisciplined decision-making at $1 billion level doesn't give you second chances.
Level 4. What the money actually costs you. 6 months in, you haven't called most of your college friends back. Not because you don't want to, because every conversation has become strange. People treat you differently.
Some are suddenly incredibly interested in your life. Some are weirdly cold, like your success is something that happened to them. One of your closest friends asks you to invest in a startup. You say you'll think about it. You never call back. The friendship quietly ends. Nobody acknowledges it. It just stops. This is the part of wealth that never shows up in the highlight reels. The isolation, the paranoia, the way money at scale fundamentally changes every relationship you have because you can never be fully sure who's in the room with you versus who's in the room with your net worth. You start thinking about this constantly. A girl you start dating, is she interested in you or in what you represent? A new friend who keeps showing up at the right moments, is he genuine or is he positioning? You can't turn this thinking off. And the longer it runs, the more it hollows you out. The hedge fund managers who survive at the highest level for decades talk about this openly. The discipline to protect your psychology is just as critical as the discipline to protect capital, because a mentally deteriorating decision maker with $1 billion under management is infinitely more dangerous than a broke 21-year-old with good instincts.
Level 5, Year 1 Results. The fund posts a 6.2% return for the year. The benchmark, the S&P 500, returned 11.4%. You underperformed the market by more than 5 percentage points. In hedge fund terms, that's not a failure, it's a catastrophe. Limited partners start making calls. One of them, a family office that has $80 million in the fund, requests a meeting. They're polite, they're professional, and they're withdrawing their capital. The thing about underperforming a basic index fund, this is the dirty secret of the hedge fund industry that the managers will never say out loud to your face. The majority of active hedge funds underperform simple, boring, low-cost index funds over any 10-year period. The ones your grandfather would have sneered at. The VOs and the VTIs that any 22-year-old with $500 can buy on Robinhood. The reason those funds charge 2 and 20, 2% of assets and 20% of profits, is not primarily because they're smarter. It's because they've sold a story about access, exclusivity, and sophistication that makes wealthy people feel like they're part of something. The product isn't always the returns. Sometimes the product is the feeling. You sit with that information for a long time. Level 6, The Reckoning.
18 months in, you make the most controversial decision of your tenure. You restructure the fund. You cut the team from 23 to 11. You simplify the strategy dramatically. You shift a significant portion of the portfolio into systematic, rules-based investments with lower fees and less complexity. The old guard thinks you're insane. David resigns. 3 of the senior analysts follow him. Industry blogs write pieces about the young heir dismantling a legacy fund. Your limited partners are split. Some respect the decisiveness, some are deeply skeptical. But here's what drives the decision. You do the actual math. For every $100 million in assets, your old structure was costing roughly $3.2 million per year in fees, salaries, overhead, and operational drag before a single return was generated. You were starting every year 3.2% in the hole before the market opened on January 2nd. No wonder you couldn't beat the index. You were carrying an anchor and racing against people swimming free. The lesson scales perfectly down to every level of wealth. The enemy of returns isn't volatility. It's fees, complexity, and overhead that compound against you silently, year after year, exactly the way credit card interest compounds against the person who keeps making minimum payments. The math works the same whether you have $20,000 or $1 billion. The cost of complexity is always higher than it looks.
What this actually teaches us.
Here's why this story matters for you, wherever you are right now. The principles that determine success at a $1 billion hedge fund are identical to the principles that determine success with your first $20,000. Don't move before you understand what you're holding. Build a process before you make a single decision. Destroy high-cost structures first, whether that's credit card interest or bloated management fees. Protect your psychology as fiercely as you protect your capital. Ignore the people who want you to be impressive and listen to the people who want you to be correct. And never, ever confuse the complexity of a thing for the quality of it. The person who inherits $1 billion and the person who opens their first Roth IRA are both standing at the same crossroads. The question isn't how much money is on the table. The question is whether you're disciplined enough to be boring when everything in your brain is screaming at you to be interesting. Because interesting loses. Boring wins. Every single time. Open the account, Buy the index fund, cut the costs, protect the process. The amount you're working with will change. The principles never do.